Hey guys, my name is Andrew Hopkins, and I'll be presenting research on how we as individuals and as the church can support families that adopt. And so, the majority of you know that families are an important part when it comes to the adoption process as a whole. The family that the child ends up being with is going to be crucial in their continuing development into adulthood. And sometimes, as these families adopt, they need different forms of support as they go through this new process of bringing a child into their homes. And so, not only does the church need to play an importance of offering this support, but also we as individuals need to offer this as well. And so, we're going to take a look on the next few slides of what are some ways that we as individuals and a church can offer this type of support. The first one is adoption support groups. Adoption support groups. And so when I first did some research on this, the first thing that kind of came to my mind was AA groups. And so AA groups are groups where people who have drug addictions or alcohol addictions, or maybe they need to go for community service hours, they go to these particular groups to get resources, to get help, to get feedback from other people so that they can get better. And so adoption support groups are kind of similar, and where people who have adopted a child come together to get different types of support, to get different resources, and honestly become better parents through this adoption process. And so, something that first that adoption support groups do is they bring people together that have similar needs. And so, if we have a family that has adopted a kid from a different culture, and they're honestly needing to get better in how they raise this particular child and bringing him to or he or she to a new culture, and we have another family that is dealing with something similar. Once they're able to come kind of to this adoption support group, they're being brought together to kind of pursue a similar solution. And I think one way that we can honestly get a solution is by working together. The next thing is it allows parents to discuss problems with each other. Let's just be real and honest. When we bring a adoptive child into our home, we have the reality of they might bring maybe some physical trauma or mental trauma to the table from maybe their home that they were brought out of, or the orphanage they were brought out of. And so that can honestly be very strenuous on a new family. And so these adoption support groups allow these particular families to come together and kind of discuss some of the similar problems that they're going through. And even, like we just said earlier, kind of bring solutions to the table. Another good thing about adoption support groups is that it benefits the children who have been adopted and can lead the children to develop relationships with similar cultural children. And so, like I just said earlier, say we have family A who has adopted a child from China, and we have family B who has adopted a child from China as well. And so, bringing these new international children to our country culturally, they're going to have maybe some bumps in trying to fit in and trying to kind of uh, adhere to our culture. And so these adoption support groups allow families that possibly have children from the same cultural background to kind of come together, and they can form relationships and kind of hang out and to some degree make the whole process of coming to a new area, new country a little bit easier. Finally, it also enables resources that each family has to be shared and spread to one another. And so the cool, unique thing about adoption support groups is it's usually led by somebody who has experience with adoption. Or obviously, there's parents who are within this particular adoption support group that have been adoptive parents probably for years. And so what that enables is if you have a new family that is new to adoption, that has brought a new child in maybe within a month or a year, they could kind of be able to connect and lean on a family that has been an adoptive family maybe for years, or has fostered children in homes before, and that enables those particular people to kind of get resources from each family and honestly help find the solution. And so, when it comes to adoption support groups, there's different types of support groups. One is a frustration and ventilation group, And this group is honestly to allow parents to kind of just resolve personal issues and problems. And so when a family adopts a new child, there can be some form of frustration. And honestly, that particular family might need to feel like they need to vent and get some of these problems out, and try to find a solution in how they can resolve the problem. And so this group is a great way for them to do that. And then next we have a service group. And so with this group, parents kind of come together to provide services to other parents with resources, classes, and books. And so I think it's cool about this group because it's not necessarily exclusive to parents who are adoptive parents, but maybe just parents in general who feel like that they want to come alongside and support parents who have adopted. And the way that they do that is they give them resources, they give them classes, they give them books, and how they can possibly step into a role of an adoptive parent, or even maybe come alongside other adoptive parents. And then lastly, we have the political group. And so this group is for parents who are wanting to kind of change the legislative program and system of adoption that can help support changes for families that adopt. And so this group is really wanting to be mainly outspoken when it comes to the whole entire structure and system of adoption. They think that to some degree that children who are going through this particular program, it needs to be changed. It needs to be changed for them. It needs to be changed for families. They don't need to wait as much. They shouldn't have as much financial difficulty as they do. And so this particular group wants to kind of change that. And so, how can the church help support the family? I believe that honestly, the first thing they could do is support a family financially. And so, adoption is not cheap, especially for a family that has been going through the process for a few years. And so, what the church can do is they can pay for groceries, they can possibly pay for medical bills, and maybe even some regular bills that the particular family has. Because, like I said, once you add a child into your family, your bills are gonna go up, your expenses are gonna go up, and so the church can definitely support with that. Another way is that they can stock a supply pantry at the church that could include diapers, baby equipment, that could be ready to give to the family when the child arrives. And so um, the church could, like I said, create kind of like a pantry, a room where it's kind of maybe open between certain hours where a family can kind of just come and get things that they need, or get things that are donated from other church members to be able to just raise the child. Another thing is provide support if the family decides to not go further with adoption. And so the reality is that sometimes families will house a particular child and want to move into the adoption process, but either one, they might not get cleared to adopt, or two, they might feel fit that it's not proper for them to adopt, maybe because some of the emotional trauma and physical trauma that the child brings. And we've kind of recognized that in one of the books that we read this past semester. And so the reality is that that happens. And the family could honestly be devastated. The family can be upset. The family can be just in a place where they need support. And so the church, I think, could take advantage of this and come alongside them and give them support in the sense of allowing them to know that it will be okay. Another thing is they can offer small groups. The church can offer small groups to help support the family that has adopted through fundraisers, social media, and even helping the congregation connect more with the family's needs. And so imagine if there was a women's small group, and there was a family that was within this small group that has recently just adopted a child. Who is ever leading that small group can kind of help raise awareness to this particular family that needs help by doing fundraisers, doing social media, and honestly, like I just said, using social media to help the congregation connect more with what the family needs overall. Continuing, churches can provide for the needs of the child that is adopted with providing toys or a friend at church. And so, like we had just discussed earlier, a child that is culturally different coming into a new culture, a new atmosphere, they can honestly feel excluded, left out, like they don't fit in. And so, something that the church could do, especially in a sense of children's ministry and student ministry, I think is emphasize placing a friend for the child, kind of doing it discreetly in a way where the child doesn't themselves know, but telling the child that you're assigning to them to just be a friend, be someone who's there for them, and kind of make them feel involved and help transition them in. Another thing that they could do is attempt to connect with those who have adopted that are not regulars at the church. They will need support just like regulars do. And so this research should not just be based on a sense of we just need to do this at the church, but what it should be based on is the church should attempt to connect with those who are not regulars of the church. This should not be just exclusive for people who are within the church, but they should try to connect with those who are honestly not members of the church, because they are going to need financial stability support and possibly other support in bringing a new child into their home. Another thing is to give the family space as their adoptive child first comes home and adjust, because too much too fast can be overwhelming for the adoptive child. And so honestly, I think this is where the church can kind of just talk with the parents and see if what their needs are, and if they need some space, not to just overwhelm the child as they first came in, because that can happen because it's a new place, it's a new environment, and so the church can just be mindful of that. Something that honestly people who adopt need support in is post-adoption depression. And so usually post-adoption depression affects adoptive mothers, with some estimates suggesting that close to 65% of adoptive mothers experience it at some point after bringing a child home. And so usually newly adopted parents report that bringing a child home reignites feelings of grief and unresolved infertility issues, all of which can contribute to depression. And so basically, if a family has lost a child in the past, or a family has not dealt with some form of grief or loss, and they finally get cleared for an adoption and they bring a new child in, that can contribute to old thoughts of grief and loss and unresolved infertility issues. And what that does is that contributes to a mindset of being depressed. And parents usually can struggle with adjusting to life with adoptive children, and they can lead towards post-adoption depression. And so this is an opportunity for the church to support them through counseling or small groups. And so many issues usually can come with parents from attempting bonding with a new child. And like I said, this is another way where small group leaders can help within this process of creating opportunities that they can all bond and do life together. Parents that are struggling with post-adoption depression, or maybe even fearful that they would struggle with post-adoption depression, I think that something that they could do is attend a parental class before adopting, to kind of help with the transition of bringing a new child in. And so a healthy church that is supporting those who are to adopt would be wise to offer this, and also even a parental class that is helping the parents through the process of being a foster parent. And so a church that is wanting to come alongside those who are adopting, I think it would be wise for them to offer some type of class before, to kind of prepare the parents who are wanting to adopt to be ready for possibly some things that they could deal with, some bonding things that they could have a struggle with, so that they could prepare them for what they're going to face. So why does this matter? Why does supporting families matter? The reality is parents need help. They need resources to be able to fulfill the calling that God has given them in adoption. And we as a church has a responsibility to care for orphans. And sometimes we need to understand, I think, that us supporting and caring for orphans is not just us adopting, but also it's caring and helping and coming alongside those who do. So we have a responsibility to care for orphans. And so regardless of the situation, regardless of the background, we should make it a necessity to make sure that we are coming alongside them and coming alongside those who have adopted.